everyone. We are gathered here in this gorgeous space, this gorgeous day with wonderful people to send off a dear friend and mentor, to remember a beloved husband and father, to pay our respects to a great man and civic leader. We're here to honor an honorable human. We've also come together to acknowledge and process, for many of us as a personal loss, and for all of us as a collective loss. Jerry collected friendships that crisscrossed every corner of our community and spanned the entire width and breadth of our country, and even beyond that. Many have traveled great distances to take part in this service today, and others are gathering with us via live stream as far west as San Francisco and as far east as Berlin. And I think Jerry would love that fact. And on behalf of Jerry's husband James and their many sons, I'd like to thank everyone for bringing your presence and your stories to this gathering today. My name is Alex Whitaker. I met Jerry while serving on a citizens work group meant to address barriers to racial justice in Kenosha County. It was quickly obvious to both of us that we shared core values in life and a mutual drive to do what we could to make our community a place where everyone feels value and has the tools and opportunity to thrive. Some months later, Jerry asked me to be his campaign manager, as he saw at the office of Kenosha County Executive. And I love that his signage made its way here today. He was very proud of that. And it was in the midst of that role that I was able to meet so many of you. Jerry really opened up his world to me. And it was in the midst of the valleys and mountaintops of that experience where Jerry and I forged a deep and meaningful friendship. I told Jerry it felt like we fit 10 years of friendship into one. Selfishly, I wanted many more. I think all of us could identify with that. We wanted more time with Jerry. And today I'm serving Jerry and his family and friends in the role of officiant. Working as a clergyman for many years in a prior season of life, this role is one that I have accepted many times, and it has a certain profound familiarity and honor, but it's different when you yourself are among the mourning. I share that to let you know that I'm right here with all of you today in our grief and our sadness, and I'd just like to give all of us, including myself, the permission to remember, to cry when what is shared is sad, to ponder the profound or moving, laugh when something is funny, especially if it's slightly irreverent, because that's exactly what Jerry would want. Nothing was more truly Jerry than a little healthy dose of irreverence. In the course of our service, we will hear tributes to Jerry from myself and from others that were close to him. And in fact, we will have a time in the service, it's called Open Tribute, in your program, where those of you want to come together up and share a memory or remembrance of Jerry, you'd be welcome to do that. We're also going to take in tributes in the form of music, as Jerry was a champion of theater and the arts. So with that, I'd like to invite Alice and Martin to come up and sing a song that I know we all can resonate with right now. That's titled Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again. Thank you.
Wishing you were somehow here again, wishing you were somehow near. Sometimes it seemed if I just dreamed, somehow you would be here.
I think that performance deserves applause. Thank you. Thank you. You know, when preparing for memorial service, it is a practice of mine to gather close family and friends and ask them questions about their loved one. And a few things almost always happen. First, you realize that every relationship is unique, that every person we know and love has a special one-of-a-kind glimpse of who we are. You know, we often say it takes a village to raise a child, but in passing, we come to find out it takes a village to know an adult. And second, we see how a person shapes and is shaped by those they love. We realize that phrases and looks and idiosyncrasies that come to define a person come tucked away from those relational spaces in their life story. And third, parents and spouses find out the real reasons for the puzzling things that happened long ago. They find out some secrets friends keep for us that are often hilarious in hindsight. So earlier this week, James gathered a group of some of Jerry's most long-standing friends and confidants, and they shared stories, they answered questions, and we reminisced about Jerry. In the midst of that conversation, many stories were shared. A few "don't tell James about this" stories were finally aired for the first time. James held it together. There were some big laughs, some big tears, and everyone shared, some themes that really captured who Jerry was started to emerge. And I want to share those themes with you, and that'll guide the eulogy here in the next moments. And the first theme is that Jerry is the friend you needed. Jerry is the friend you needed. Jerry had a large number of friendships because he was able to participate in a large variety of friendships. Ryan, one of his co-workers and the officiant of his wedding to James, said, "You understood your friendship with Jerry, and it was unique from everyone else's relationship with Jerry." Personally, I believe Jerry's embrace of himself as a layered, often quirky person opened up the possibility to connect with others at any layer or any quirk. Jerry could connect with people in any subculture because a genuine part of him was fluent, was at home there. To those who housed a hidden nerd, his friendship brought that out. To those who tended to take life too seriously, he was the irreverent jokester. To those who needed a champion, he was the clear-eyed leader. To those who had a challenge, Jerry was the one who could get things done. And it was all who he was. It was all a part of the genuine, complicated, skilled, and often hilarious person that Jerry embodied. And to those who needed courage, Jerry was possibly the best person you could cross paths with. That brings me to the next theme of Jerry, the encourager. And Jerry's encouragement was especially potent, and I think I learned something from watching him. He fused a superpower that only he had, or very few people have, with a talent. If Jerry had a superpower in life, it was making people feel seen in the world. When with him, his presence and attention felt like it was just given completely to you. Jerry seemed especially attentive to people who felt overlooked. Our mutual friend Daniel said of him in his tribute online, he said, Jerry always made me feel less alone when I encountered him. He was just a good person. And that good character and heart emanated from him in any room I found him in. There may be no greater value a person can bring to the world than making people feel seen and less alone. And Jerry did this often. It may have been this very reason Jerry became such a powerful mentor to young people in the final season of his life. For a young person, being seen and feeling like someone can identify with your story, that's powerful. And this scene was then coupled with another gift he had, which was directness. Jerry could look in your eyes and really say something to you. like few people I know. Many of you here know what I'm talking about. You've experienced this. For whatever reason, Jerry's words were able to blow past the webs of self-doubt that often lock away our potential. Jerry took this seeing and this directness, and he was able to speak courage into the hearts of those he cared about. This is why people close to Jerry tended to succeed. They elevated their view of themselves, which then led to elevated success in life. If we went around this room, I bet we'd hear countless stories of Jerry speaking courage into people, motivating them to grab the potential and dreams that were already inside them. Jerry wanted to see people reach their next destination in life, which brings us to our next theme, which is Jerry the Traveler. And I mean this in two ways. First, concretely, Jerry traveled. As you can see in the pictures behind me, Jerry and James have a living room that tells 1,000 stories. While Jerry loved to experience new places, what he really seemed to love, as you got talking to people that know him, was taking people places where he had already been, but were new to them. James said that one of Jerry's favorite things was to bring their sons on trips, tailoring each one to be the perfect adventure to fit their particular interests. Jerry especially loved New York City. James said Jerry knew every inch of that island. It is a great city, but I think Jerry liked going there because of that familiarity that he had allowed him to create an experience that he knew his loved ones would enjoy. Last year, Jerry and his family traveled to the Big Apple with longtime friend Lori and her husband Galen. And one of Lori's dreams was to ice skate under Rockefeller Center. And they did this. Unfortunately, while skating, Galen fell and hit his head hard enough that the medical team had to take a look at his injuries. When he was gone for longer than Jerry liked, Jerry burst his way into the medical tent, proclaiming himself to be a doctor. And when no one was buying that story, he quickly pivoted and said that he was family. And that was truer, I think, than the staff knew. But traveling almost wasn't a possibility for Jerry. Early in life, he had a significant phobia of flying. But when he saw that this was going to hold him back from the life he wanted and was going to stop James from going to the places he wanted to visit, he signed up for a fear of flying class. He and James commuted for many weekends to complete this class and conquer his fears. And James and his really good friend Michelle said that when Jerry got his passport, it was one of the proudest moments of his life. I believe this moment marked Jerry. It marked Jerry as a time when he spoke courage into his own life. And later, he would do this very same thing for others. So Jerry was a courageous traveler of the world, but he was also a traveler of life. Jerry struck out from Tennessee and journeyed the country, moving from one opportunity to the other and gaining with each a lesson. And he grew along the way. As I spoke to this group of people who had known Jerry for many years and throughout many seasons, they talked about how they saw Jerry grow and develop. And this picture came into focus. Lori called it the Arc of Jerry, which had a certain ring to it. James said that it was really upon arriving back in Kenosha that Jerry embraced a new destination within himself, one defined by care and service to others. Jerry told Lori in one of their conversations about this, he says, "I've replaced my joy. The things that used to make me happy just don't anymore. And right now it's all about the things that I'm doing." And he did a lot. What he was referencing is getting involved in the mentoring of youth at Nash Elementary at his friend Margot's invitation. He ran and served as a county board supervisor. He joined the LGBTQ board locally, became a fixture and a champion of the Kenosha public market, I took a leadership role in AFS's foreign exchange program. Jerry oriented his life and his schedule toward the service of others. As I've talked to many people about Jerry's passing, as far as service to local community goes, I feel like we lost the equivalent of a dozen people when we lost Jerry. So for all of you who loved and encouraged Jerry along the way, I want to thank you on behalf of everyone who got to know Jerry. The Jerry who arrived back here in Pleasant Prairie some years ago. He was embodying a new place within himself, and our community is better for it. And as a traveler, we can't overlook one key factor that was present throughout Jerry's travels through this life. And now it's James. When you spoke to friends about, it was always Jerry and James, or James and Jerry. They were linked in the minds of people close to them. This is what happens when you spend 28 years in partnership traveling life together. In their relationship, I witnessed up close to total acceptance of two people, one for another. You could feel that there was an embrace of who the other person was, their individual goals, without a desire to be anything but supportive. And having spent many hours in this home this past winter, probably too many according to James, I got to see firsthand their devotion to one another. This didn't manifest in huge gestures or many words. For them, it was communicated in small, thoughtful acts. Deeply supportive eye contact. In the quiet space in the wake of Jerry being Jerry, or James being James. And I must say there was a lot more of the former, which probably comes as no surprise. Jerry didn't become Jerry Gulley without James Shed. The great man we all got to know doesn't come into being without you. Jerry do that, so do we. And I hope you do as well. I knew there was no making it past that part. I apologize. This leads me to my last theme, which is Jerry, the father figure. When I asked his friends what Jerry was most proud of in life, the answer was fast: his sons. Jerry brought incredible intentionality to being a loving, caring, open father figure to young men who shared a season of life with him. Being chosen to come live with Jerry and James was like finding the golden ticket. I remember one afternoon particularly, I was there, I was hungry without much of a lunch plan, and there was Benjamin on the couch. Jerry wasn't there, I think he was on a call, and James said, "I just happened to throw together some bread pudding. I can heat it up for you, it'll be ready in about 10 minutes. And I said, "Yes, I think I'll have some bread pudding." All of us that have been on the receiving end of something that James has just thrown together know what happened in about 10 minutes. It was one of the best bread puddings I've ever had in my life. Benjamin also had some. And I remember looking at him, he's fresh off a trip to Lambeau Field, New York City, discussions of a future trip to Florida, while eating one of the best bread puddings I've ever had in my life. And I said to Benjamin, I said, "You know this isn't normal, right?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And then I continued to eat. You know, Benjamin will share more in a moment, but it was clear to anyone who knew Jerry in this last season of life that few things stirred Jerry's passions more than the foreign exchange program and investing in those young men. And his investment in and love for these young men will be part of his legacy, and they will live on for generations. Jerry is certainly gone too soon, but he packed a lot of living into the life he had. And his leadership, his love, his friendship, and investment will live on, and it will reverberate in all of us. This time I'd like to invite Benjamin up for his tribute.
When I came to America, I was nervous and excited, but did not quite know what to expect. The first thing that struck me was the incredible excitement that Jerry embodied. That excitement, interest in each other, and the love never faded, but only got bigger as time went on. That interest in each other between Jerry and me was the most remarkable aspect of our relationship. We would often literally talk for hours with nothing else going on, often about big societal questions and sometimes about absolutely mundane things. We did not need much more than ourselves and James to have a great time together. Jerry went above and beyond to ensure my happiness. He planned trips literally around me and my interests because, as he said, when I had a great time, he did too. I could say a lot about us traveling in general, but I remember myself saying in New York that it was something that I would not give away for anything in the world. It's safe to say that during our trips together, I was the happiest I have ever been in my life. The simple thing of each other's presence was, as I've already said, something we both cherished very, very much. I would get happy even when Jerry was just picking me up from school, as he would tell me, full of excitement as well, what he had done that day. Another thing that I did not understand until I asked was why Jerry was so happy and excited each school morning when I came out of my room at 6:30 a.m. It might have been partly because of his Mountain Dew consumption. but he told me it was because he got to see me, which is probably one of the sweetest things anyone has ever said to me. What I deeply appreciated as well was Jerry's unwavering sincerity, and that he always said exactly what he thought. Whether he was bored of something or somebody, or appreciated something, he always said it out loud. The same goes for his sometimes sarcastic humor, which is something that we shared. Lastly, Jerry was my dad. He was always there for me during all highs and lows this past year. I can say confidently that nobody has ever understood me as a person the way he did. The same goes for the bucket loads of love I received every day, which was something I had not experienced ever before. We already miss you so much, and I'll never stop loving you.
So at this time, we're going to take in a video tribute from the mothers of Jerry's and James's host sons.
to his partner James, to all of the many friends of Jerry Gulley, to his relatives, the people that he worked with and for, you have my deepest sympathy. Jerry Gulley was just an outstanding individual. I got to know Jerry when he was the education director for a company that I was the chairman of, Ed Lodgings. He did an excellent job. Jerry always gave more than he ever asked of anybody else. Jerry was a doer. He was a giver. He was an individual that really wanted perfection if it's at all possible. He wanted to improve things. And when he got done with Ed Logics, he decided that he could do more. And he wanted to get into the public arena where he could serve. Jerry was an individual that loved community, loved people, and loved service. So he ran for the county board of Kenosha, got elected, did a great job. Set up a program for racial and ethnic difficulties and differences to improve it, which he did. And then, of course, he decided that he wanted to run for county executive. Brought together a lot of diverse groups. And Jerry was always that kind of a person. To know Jerry was to love him. He was personable. He was intelligent. He was giving. And to his partner, to his relatives, and to his friends. We lost a giant. We lost an individual that was a real leader. A person that you could count on. A person that would always be there for you and to serve you and to do what is possibly the best. Jerry was an individual that I had the utmost respect for and friendship, and we lost a great one when Jerry Gulley passed away. So today is his memorial. I know Jerry would want us to celebrate and to enjoy each other. That's the way Jerry was. He loved community, he loved citizens, and he loved to serve. If we just remember that, we can all be better persons like Jerry Gulley. His loss is going to be big for his partner, his friends, his relatives. It's going to be a big loss to me, to the county of Kenosha, and the state of Wisconsin.
Well, with Governor Thompson's video tribute, that is going to bring us to our time of open tributes. And so this will be a time where if you're here, even if you had nothing planned, you just have a memory or something you'd like to share, we will kind of open the floor if you'd like to do that. To start us off will be his good friend, Michelle.
Hi, everybody. My name's Michelle, and I'm from Seattle, Washington. I was born and raised in San Francisco and Calistoga, California, and this is my journey. It'll always be James and Jerry, because A comes before E. There will not be a James without Jerry. It's just the way it will be. In June of 1998, I had relocated back to the hometown of my grandparents in Calistoga, California, where I worked at the Culinary Institute of America at Greystone. Within days, there was this gawky, quirky, odd fellow that would walk across from my desk to supposedly check out the Job and Housing Board. And after a few days, I said, "Hey, why don't you come over here and just talk to me? Quit staring at me." So we made friends, like twins. It was Jerry first, not James, in this go-round as well. But within moments, he walked me down the long hall where I met James. And if you were to look in my phone under contacts, it says Sweet James, because that's what James is to me. James and Jerry and I have traveled to foreign lands. James and Jerry have brought me to foreign yet domestic lands like Birmingham, Alabama, and Kenosha, Wisconsin. My last days with Jerry were spent on the beaches of Belize. We went on dates. We told each other stories. We held hands. He was truly one of the deepest loves of my life. Collecting. Some of us, James, are born into families where you're loved and you're supported. Others of us, like Jerry, we get to collect along the way. Jerry set out to collect his friends. In this tent are 4 of the most special people in his life. I start with Amanda, who he collected in college. I got picked up along the way. Then he met Sweet Laurie, who he loved. Then he moved on to Margot. Well, you don't get to beat Margot. We are all very different, each and every one of us, but he chose us and we chose him. I don't know why. We're all so very different, but he chose us, and we're lucky for that. That leads me to Al and Kelly. Your daughter chose him to marry her. And even deeper, there's a story I like to share about life and death. And your granddaughter plays a huge role in that. Because when somebody dies, they go to the other side, and we here are left grieving. But on the other side, when a child is born here, we celebrate. And on the other side, there is grieving. And your grandchild and Jerry passed within 24 hours each other from one side to the other. And that is a blessing that everybody gets to cherish and hold on to. If I had $1, if I had $1 for every time Jerry would say, "Don't tell James." The suits were expensive, the shirts were expensive, the eyeglasses were really expensive, and especially don't tell him how much I spent on those theater tickets. Grateful. I am personally grateful. Jerry led me along many paths. He pushed me to be better. He pushed me to expect more, to be more, to give more. He made me a better person. He helped me realize that life has so much to offer. I wouldn't be who I am today. And every once in a while, if I'd have a good day at work or got a big raise, I would text Jerry and I would say thank you, because he gave me the courage to want and to be more all the time. Love, kisses, and hugs. Jerry's first love was Dolly Parton. I think that that's important to mention. But James was the stars, the moon, and the sun. They balanced each other like no other. They were the perfect yin and yang. James was the calm. Jerry was the spaz. They balanced each other unlike any others. Now, if you knew Jerry the way I did, and we had a very unique and special relationship, the more he poked at you, that really meant he loved you more. If he said, "Bite me," he really meant to say, "Kiss me." If he said, "Don't touch me," that said, "Hug me tighter." I was known for getting on top of Jerry, holding him down, and loving him, because I know that's what he wanted, even though he would pretend that he wouldn't. At least that's what I tell myself. To me, Jerry was wildly perfect and inappropriate. He was crafty and ridiculously blunt. He did not mix his words. His wit was dry yet poignant. To James, you are deeply loved. You have, sorry. You've met your quota. Papa Shend, you can't go anywhere for a really long time. My James has met his quota. His mom, his Ellen, and now his better half. Well, other, I would say you are the better. And with that said, I just would like to end with what my family would always hear and laugh at. James, James, James. Because he always thought that we all loved James more.
But truly, it was always very equal because there was not one without the other. And honestly, I keep waiting for him to jump out of that truck because God, he would love that. So thank you all for coming out today and showing your love. And please, those of you that live here, hold my James up. Keep him strong. And just smile at him. As I love him so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That was beautiful. Anyone else before we move on wanted to say a few words?
Hello, my name is Lucas. I've been here 8 years ago, also as an exchange student. And the first day of school, I had to pick my schedule, and Jerry drove me up to the school, and he told me he has my back. That's what he said, and I didn't understand the phrase back then. So so I looked at him weirdly, and he explained that he is always there for me, and that's exactly what he was the whole year. Everything I wanted to do, everything I wanted, he just made it real, made it happen. He was, always very sorry. I remember he was sorry. I was not supposed to be with James and Jerry in the first place. I was supposed to be somewhere else, but then they told me, they found a permanent family, AFS found a permanent family for me. So I was very excited to meet James and Jerry. And the third day of school, something like this, Jerry told me that they were only a welcome family, and they actually didn't even want me in the first place. But then they're like, okay, now we have him, so now we keep him. So they told me they would keep me, so I was very happy, but also confused. But in the end, it turned out to be the best thing that they kept me. And then Jerry was just the most wonderful person, as the previous speakers all mentioned. He was really believing in you, everything you said. He listened to you, and he understood it. He made you seem heard. He made you just be important. I mean, he made you just feel that great if you're talking to him. But he also had his weird side, his quirky side. He was insecure about some things. It was like, I remember there was a picture of us in a museum, and I think it was at that museum. Someone was looking at him, and he went up to me and like, "You see that guy? I'm gonna fight him." He was always like that, very, very curious sometimes. So much so that I went and took his phone and I changed his name to Moody Mouse. And then he was doing a lot of conference calls. So one time we were driving back from school, and one of the guys was on the conference call was like, "Who's Moody Mouse?" So yeah, he had to explain that. So yeah. Anyway, yes, I mean we all do. Wish I had more time with Jerry and with James. And yeah, I think that's what I wanted to share. Thank you very much.
All right. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Phil Hine. I'm Jerry and Jim's brother-in-law. I think I do the same thing. I first met Jerry, must have been about 20 years ago, when he came to Wisconsin for a visit, but he stayed at our house. I know at the time it was just Sue and I and our dog, and we thought, what should we do tonight? We live in Burlington, and well, let's go see a movie. And the only movie that I had any interest in seeing was Dodgeball, which I knew would be right up my alley, but I wasn't quite so sure about how Jerry would like it. I just met him. I could tell he was quite a bit more sophisticated and urbane than I was, which isn't a real big stretch, but it was true. And I knew the movie was going to be sophomoric and ridiculous. And we were watching it, and I was kind of watching to see what he would think of that. And there was a scene, and I'm not going to describe it, and both of us just hooted. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to get along good with this guy, because it was the dumbest thing. And another thing I want to share is when Jerry first met our son Henry, he would say, and there's Henry over there, he'd say, "Henry, say taco. Say taco." And we all thought that was pretty funny, and they weren't living here then, so it was every now and then he would visit, and then they came to visit, and Henry pointed at him and he said, "Taco." So ever since Henry was about a year old, it's been Uncle Jim and Uncle Taco. And are we going to Taco in Jim's house? It just was kind of good. And besides being a great brother-in-law, he was a great uncle to our kids. He was always interested in all their activities. He gave them the best, he and James, but I think Jerry was kind of the gift finder. And he always gave them the best gifts, always came to musicals and softball games and swim meets and all that kind of stuff. And most importantly, he would go shopping with them, make sure they had good clothes. He loved my children very much. And I'll miss him always, but I mean, especially at events like this, where this was his bag. He knew a little something about everybody in here. He remembered that, and then there was always that connection. He would come up, and that was what you were connecting with. That's what you were talking about, and that was really, he would care what's going on in your lives. And I just know how much he would enjoy this. He would have enjoyed last night. Every time I'm in a big group now, like a friend and family group, that's really going to hit, because that's where he was in his element. And I really wish he was here today.
All right. Anyone else? Come on.
Alrighty. I'm one of the people that called him Uncle Taco. So that's how I'm gonna refer to him. I think one of the best memories I've had with him is we were at my house, I'm pretty sure. It's a long time ago. And he went outside for a conference call. And I'm pretty sure he fired somebody that night on Christmas Eve. And I was always I always will keep that in memory. And because it's just like a funny thing. And I never really remember, I remember some of it, but that was one of the favorite things. And then he introduced me to one of my favorite people, Mrs. Beth. She was my coach for swimming, but we always hung out with her in Kenosha. That was a fun thing. And I kind of forgot about this, but he gave me, I don't know, what, a gift card to go to Banana Republic. And I've only been there once when we went to Chicago. And he took me to Tiffany's there, and he said on my 16th birthday we'd get something. But also, he also gave me crap because I was wearing
He gave you crap for.
Well,
You're not off the hook.
I was wearing ripped jeans and Tiffany's, and he gave me a lot of crap that day. But that morning he had this eye thing. I can't remember. Something was wrong with his eyes, so he had to put in 3 eye drops. He's like, "Rosie, can you help?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to touch your eye." So we were all just sitting there. I forgot who I went with. It was like a 12 exchange. Oh, it's on. And I just watched him, and I was laughing because he was in pain. Not not in a funny way, but it was just, I had lots of inside jokes with Uncle Taco, which I really can't say, but it'd be fun to say out loud. But I just will miss him because of his personality. That he was always there. Like, he always showed up to my events.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Now we're on. Here we are. So, like our microphone. A little higher? Okay.
Your right hand, it can't cover the bottom.
Oh, I see. We're learning new things together here. So, our next, is there anyone else who'd like to take part in our tribute here? Or could we move on to our musical performance? Ben? You are, sir. Nice and high on the microphone there.
Gotcha. There we go. My name is Ben Johnson. I first met James and Jerry just shy of 10 years ago. They had recently moved from San Francisco. James was working in Milwaukee at the time, and Jerry was actually splitting time 3 weeks in San Francisco and then a week in Kenosha. They hired me somewhat on blind faith. I had just started a dog walking and pet sitting business, and they hired me to walk their dogs, Loki and Marley, at the time. I still remember Jerry's original email inquiring about services and introducing himself and the dogs, because I remember he said he had a very sweet shepherd mix named Marley and a mix named Loki who was dumber than a box of rocks. And I thought, wow, this guy making fun of his dog in the original email. But then we all knew, that's what Jerry liked to do. I met with James and Jerry and the dogs on a cold January day at their house down right off the lake, even colder down there. And they were very warm, very inviting, very friendly. When I left that initial client meeting, I had the thought that I had one of my first regular clients, and that was great for me and great for the business. Little did I know at the time that I had actually made a connection with someone who was going to be a champion for me and for my business, someone who I could bounce ideas off of, look to for support, and Jerry was continuous with that, as everybody who knows him knows he was. And that's something that I truly appreciated. I looked forward to the weeks when Jerry was in Kenosha. Granted, I tended to get way behind on my dog walking schedule those weeks because of chatting with Jerry. It was great to connect with him. He was always very interested in how the business was going and how I was, in my family, in my son, and had that true interest. When Jerry eventually moved to Kenosha, for good, he had yet to get his driver's license right away, so it was nice to be able to connect with him when I came over. Even though he was home, I continued to walk the dogs, and I even walked Jerry for free. I won't get into the personal information, but we did deal with a pretty significant stressful family situation throughout a lot of 2021. When that situation was resolved, the first person that we saw when it was resolved in Target was Jerry, and I just could not imagine a better person to run into and connect with at that time. It really meant a lot to me. His words meant a lot to me, and his enthusiasm and support of the family meant a lot to me too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue, and I'm Jerry's sister-in-law, and I just wanted to tell you about Jerry the athlete. I knew I couldn't leave without everybody knowing that Jerry was an athlete. And on the same trip that my husband told us about, or told you about, I was getting to know Jerry, and we had a brand new little puppy named Maggie. And Phil was not home, and Jerry and I were going to take Maggie for a walk. and we had one of those retractable leashes, and I'm sure Ben would have a few things to say about that. Well, something spooked the dog, and she took off running, and the leash was locked. So she's only about 10 weeks old, and this leash is bouncing behind her, and that terrified her. So we couldn't get to her, and so I said, we gotta run. And so this was early summer, so picture Jerry in shorts, a cap, and a t-shirt. Neither one of us had any kind of tan whatsoever. And the leash is bouncing and the dog's yipping, and we're new to the neighborhood. And so we started running down the street, and the dog is running about a half a block in front of us, and everybody is stopping to watch. I gave out before Jerry. That's why Jerry is the athlete. Jerry kept going. I think it was about 6 blocks. We finally got back to our house, and the puppy was in the corner, just terrified, looking at the retractable leash. And so Jerry had Maggie, and I looked at Jerry after being able to talk, because we both were out of breath, and I said, "Don't tell Phil." And he never did. So we will miss him very, very much. He's left a huge hole, as all of you know. Thanks.
All right. Okay. Well, with that, we are going to go into our musical tributes. And the first number we have is "You'll Be Found." It will be performed by Steve, Allison, and Joy.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear? So let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand,
try to get through this final song. When James asked me to sing, I felt it was such an honor. And even though I only knew Jerry for a short amount of time, he touched my life in a deep way. And I'd like to take a pause and just remember what an amazing man he was. And I'm sure all of you love him as much as I do. So as I sing this song, remember that you love him and he's still around. I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood, and I can change if I've been changed for the better, but because I knew you, I have been changed for good. It will maybe that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is made from what I've learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend, like a ship blown from its mooring by the wind off the sea, like a seed dropped by a skybird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good. And just to clear the air, I ask forgiveness for the things I've done you blame me for. But then I guess we know there's blame to share, and none of this seems to matter anymore. Like a ship blown from its mooring by the wind off the sea, like a seed dropped by a bird in the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? I do believe I have been changed for the better. Because I knew you. Because I knew you.
Steve, Allison, and Joy, thank you for that. That was a gift. Now to close our service, we'll have one final tribute from Lori. Lori, why don't you come up?
Hi, I'm Lori, and I'm honored that Jerry often called me his best friend. And I want to thank you all for making me smile and laugh today as we remember him. Thank you. I asked James if I could close the service today with a blessing that I know Jerry was fond of. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rain fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, dear Jerry, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much. Thank you.
On behalf of James and his family, and we're going to enjoy some music as we leave, and go in peace, everyone. Thank you.